The rain came down in sheets that Thursday night, just like it had 6 months ago. Min-jae stood at his office window on the 3rd floor, staring out at nothing, at everything, at the ghost of a woman who haunted every corner of this mansion. The clock on his desk read 11:47 p.m. He hadn't slept in 3 days, hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. Didn't matter. Nothing mattered anymore. The empire he de-built, the one that made politicians nervous and rivals disappear, felt like a monument to emptiness, beautiful, powerful, utterly hollow. And then his phone rang. Security. His headguard's voice was tense, uncertain. "Sir, there's someone at the gate, a woman. She says you know her." Min-jae's jaw tightened. "Tell her to leave. Sir, she has a—" The guard paused. "She has a baby with her." The world stopped. Min-jae didn't remember walking down the stairs, didn't remember crossing the marble floors or opening the front door. But suddenly he was standing at the entrance, rain pouring around him, staring at the impossible. Kioma. Drenched, trembling, eyes red from crying or exhaustion or both. And in her arms, wrapped in a thin blanket, was a baby. 3 months old, maybe 4, with his eyes. "I thought I'd never see her again," Min-jae would later tell himself in the dark, trying to make sense of what happened. "I thought letting her go was the hardest thing I'd ever do." Until she came back. With a child, his child, a son he never knew existed. But the look on Kioma's face wasn't relief. It wasn't a love or longing or any of the things he de-imagined during 6 months of sleepless nights. It was terror. "Min-jae," she whispered, voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I didn't want to come back. I swore I never would, but—" Her eyes darted to the darkness behind her, like someone was watching. "Someone wants us dead." And just like that, Min-jae understood. She didn't come back for him. She came back because a monster from his past was hunting her, hunting them, and their son. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is part 2 of a story that I'll break your heart and put it back together in ways you won't see coming. If you haven't watched part 1 yet, where a ruthless Korean mafia boss showed mercy to the woman everyone told him to ignore, and it changed both their lives forever, go watch that first. Trust me, you'll want the full story, because what you're about to hear, it raises the stakes to a whole new level. The woman I set free returned to my doorstep with a secret that changed everything. A baby with my eyes. Let that sink in for a moment. Have you ever lost someone you loved, only to have them come back when you least expected it? Not in the way you dreamed, not with open arms and happy endings, but out of desperation, out of fear, because they had nowhere else to go. She didn't return for love. She returned because a monster from my past was hunting her. And our son. A man who wanted revenge, who knew the fastest way to destroy Min-jae wasn't it to kill him, it was to take away everything he loved. So what would you do if the person you saved became the person you had to save all over again? What would you do if your one act of mercy became the reason they were now in danger? Before I tell you how a single night between them created a life they never planned, and how that life put them both in the crosshairs of a man who wants revenge, hit that subscribe button and comment where you are watching from and what you think happened when she walked through those gates. Trust me, you need to hear this. 6 months. That's how long Kioma had been gone. 183 days, to be exact. Not that Min-jae was counting, except he was. Every single one. The mansion looked the same as it always had. Immaculate marble floors, crystal chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River. A palace built on power and fear. But it felt different now. Lifeless. Like a museum. Beautiful to look at, but empty. A place where nothing lived, nothing grew, nothing breathed. Min-jae threw himself into work the way drowning men grasp at air. He expanded his territory into Incheon, crushed a rival syndicate in Busan, made more money in 6 months than most people saw in a lifetime. His empire grew, his influence spread. Politicians returned his calls faster, enemies disappeared quicker. But none of it mattered. Because every morning when he woke up in that massive bed alone, the first thought that hit him was the same. She's gone. And every night when he couldn't sleep, which was most nights, he'd stand at this window and stare at the rain, remembering the night he first saw her, kneeling, hungry, refusing to break. The night everything changed. His men noticed the shift. Park Ji-hoon, his new head of operations, once joked during a meeting, "Boss, you're making us all look soft. We used to be feared, now we're terrifying." It wasn't a compliment. Min-jae had become colder, more ruthless. The brief crack in his armour, the humanity Keoma had pulled out of him, was sealed shut now, permanently. Or so he told himself. Negotiations that used to end in compromise now ended in bloodshed. Mercy, that dangerous thing he'd shown once, was gone, erased, like it never existed, because mercy had cost him the only thing he'd ever wanted. Her. But there were reminders everywhere. The east wing, where she used to sleep, stayed empty. No one was allowed to use it. The kitchen, where she'd once scrubbed floors on her knees, felt haunted. And in his jacket pocket, the same black coat he'd draped over her shoulders that rainy night, he still carried it. The napkin, the one she'd used to wrap half her bread, carefully folded, saved. He kept it like some men kept photographs, like it was proof she'd been real, that what he felt hadn't been a hallucination born from loneliness. His advisors thought he was losing his mind. Maybe he was. "I told myself I did the right thing," Min-jae muttered to himself one night, alone in his study, whiskey glass in hand. That letting her go was love, that freedom was the greatest gift I could give her. But every day without her felt like dying slowly. Every morning he woke up felt like punishment, and every night he couldn't sleep felt like purgatory, trapped between the man he used to be and the man he'd briefly become because of her. The clock ticked toward midnight, the rain hammered against the windows, and Min-jae stood there, staring at nothing, wondering if this was all there was now. Endless wealth, endless power, endless emptiness. Until the phone rang, until security said a woman was at the gate, until he opened the door and saw her standing there, broken, desperate, holding a baby that had his eyes. And suddenly, the emptiness was replaced by something far more dangerous. Purpose. Because the woman he loved was in danger, and their son was a target. And Min-jae Ryu, the man who'd spent 6 months becoming a monster again, remembered something he'd forgotten. Monsters protect what they love, even if it destroys them. It all happened 3 weeks before she left. The storm that night was violent. Thunder that shook the windows, lightning that turned the sky white, rain that sounded like bullets against glass. Min-jae was in his study at 2 a.m, surrounded by documents he wasn't reading, nursing whiskey he wasn't tasting. The threats against Keoma had been handled. The lieutenants who'd terrorized her were gone. The mansion was quiet again. Safe. But safety, he was learning, didn't erase fear. It just gave fear time to settle into your bones. He heard the soft knock before he saw her. The door opened slowly, and there she was, Keoma, in an oversized shirt that probably belonged to the household staff, hair loose around her shoulders, eyes wide and red-rimmed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I couldn't sleep." Min-jae set down his glass. "Nightmares?" She nodded, wrapping her arms around herself like she was trying to hold the pieces together. "Even though they're gone," she said, voice shaking, "I still feel it. Like they're still here. Like I'm still—" She couldn't finish. He didn't say anything. Just stood, crossed the room, and pulled her close. She broke. All the strength she'd been clinging to, all the dignity she'd fought so hard to keep, it shattered against his chest. She sobbed. Deep, wrenching sounds that came from somewhere so raw it hurt to hear. And Min-jae just held her. No words, no promises. just his arms around her, solid and steady, like he could be the wall between her and the world. "You're safe now," he murmured into her hair. "I promise. No one will ever hurt you again." She looked up at him then, tears streaming down her face, and something shifted. The comfort turned to something else. Something neither of them planned. Neither of them could stop. It wasn't romantic. There were no candles, no soft music, no whispered declarations of love. It was desperate, raw, inevitable. Two broken people reaching for something real in a world that had tried to destroy them both. She kissed him first. Or maybe he kissed her, it was hard to say. It didn't matter. What mattered was that for the first time in their lives, they weren't alone. They spent that night together, holding each other like the world was ending. Like morning would take this away, and they'd go back to being who they were supposed to be. Master and servant, protector and protected. Strangers pretending they didn't see each other. But for one night, they were just two people who needed to feel something other than pain. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains, soft and unforgiving. Kioma woke first, tangled in sheets that weren't hers, in a bed that wasn't hers, next to a man who'd just become everything she couldn't afford to want. Min-jae was still asleep, face relaxed in a way she'd never seen. Vulnerable. Human. She slipped out quietly, dressed in silence, and left before he woke. Neither of them spoke about it. Not that day. Not the next. Not ever. The awkwardness hung between them like smoke, visible but untouchable. What were they supposed to say? That it meant something. That it didn't. That one night of comfort had just complicated everything. 2 weeks later, Min-jae called her into his study and gave her freedom. New passport, bank account, plane ticket home. "You deserve more than this," he'd said, not looking at her. "More than me." And Kioma, who'd spent months trapped, scared, invisible, finally had the choice she'd been denied. So she took it. She boarded that plane, left Seoul behind, and convinced herself she'd done the right thing. Until 2 weeks after landing in Lagos when she missed her period. Then missed it again. Then took a test in a small pharmacy bathroom and stared at 2 pink lines that changed everything. She didn't tell him. How could she? He'd given her freedom out of guilt, out of obligation, out of some misguided sense of righteousness. If she told him about the baby, he'd ask her to stay. Not because he loved her, but because he'd feel responsible. And Kioma refused to be someone's burden. Refused to trap him the way she'd been trapped. "I thought I was protecting both of us," she'd whisper to herself months later, holding her newborn son, tears streaming down her face. "I thought silence was kinder than the truth." But kindness, she was learning, was just another word for cowardice. Now, Min-jae stood frozen at the entrance, rain pouring around him, staring at the woman he thought he'd lost forever, and the baby in her arms. Kioma looked nothing like the woman who'd left 6 months ago. She was thinner, exhausted, dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and constant fear. Her clothes were worn, her hair pulled back in a messy knot, and her hands, those hands that used to scrub floors and wrap bread with care, were shaking. But it was her eyes that destroyed him. Haunted, terrified, desperate. "Min-jae," she said quietly, voice barely audible over the rain. "I'm sorry, I didn't know where else to go." He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Because his eyes had locked onto the baby, the small bundle in her arms, wrapped in a blanket too thin for this weather. A baby with dark hair, tiny fists, and eyes. God, those eyes. His eyes. "This is a zinner," Kioma whispered, stepping closer, pulling the blanket back so Min-jae could see his son's face. The world tilted. Everything he thought he knew, about the past 6 months, about why she left, about what that night meant, shattered like glass. "He's yours," she said, and her voice cracked on the words. Min-jae couldn't breathe, couldn't think. He had a son, 3 months old, maybe 4, and he'd had no idea. "Why didn't you tell me?" he finally managed, voice barely a whisper. Kiyoma's eyes filled with tears. Because I didn't want you to keep me out of guilt. Guilt? The word came out strangled. You think— Yes, she interrupted, firm despite the tears. You gave me freedom because you felt responsible for what happened, not because you wanted me, and I wouldn't let you feel obligated to keep me because of a baby. The silence between them was deafening. Min-jae stared at her, at the woman who'd rather raise a child alone in a foreign country than burden him with the truth. The woman who'd left because she thought she wasn't wanted. And now? He asked, voice rough. Kiyoma looked down at Izina, then back up at Min-jae, and when she spoke, her voice broke completely. Now someone is trying to kill us. Min-jae's blood ran cold. What? She stepped closer, out of the rain, into the shelter of the doorway, and he saw it then, the fear that went deeper than exhaustion. 2 weeks after I got home, she said quickly, words tumbling out, men started following me, watching my mother's house, taking pictures. I thought I was paranoid at first, but then— Something inside Min-jae snapped. Not rage, not yet. Something colder, more dangerous. Purpose. He looked up at Kiyoma, and when he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. Come inside, he said quietly. Min-jae, Now. It wasn't a request. He stepped aside, and Kiyoma, exhausted, terrified, out of options, walked through the door. Into the mansion she swore she'd never return to, carrying the son Min-jae never knew existed. While somewhere in the darkness, a monster waited. And the clock was ticking. Min-jae led Kiyoma into his private study and locked the door behind them. Not to trap her, to protect her. Because if what she was saying was true, if Volkov was really behind this, then every second mattered. Tell me everything, he said, voice low and controlled, from the beginning. Kiyoma sat on the leather couch, Izina still in her arms, and the story poured out. It started 2 weeks after I landed in Lagos, she began, voice shaking. I thought I was imagining it at first. A man in a black car parked outside my mother's house, the same face at the market 3 days in a row, someone taking pictures of me at the clinic. Min-jae's jaw clenched. You went to the authorities? She laughed bitterly. And tell them what? That I think someone's following me? In Lagos, the police don't care unless someone's already dead. So you did nothing? I tried to disappear, she said. Moved my mother to a friend's place, stopped going out, but they found me anyway. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Then they went after my brother, Chukwudi. He was walking home from work when 3 men jumped him in an alley, beat him so badly he couldn't recognize his own face in the mirror. Min-jae's hands curled into fists. They left him with a message, Kiyoma continued, reaching into her bag with trembling hands. This. She pulled out a phone, cracked screen, cheap model, and scrolled through photos, then handed it to Min-jae. The first image made his stomach drop. Izina, sleeping peacefully in a crib. Except someone had drawn crosshairs over his face, red marker, deliberate. The second photo was worse. Chiyoma's mother walking to church, unaware she was being followed, the same crosshairs over her head. The third was a message. Tell us where Ryu Min-jae is, or your family dies. You have 1 week. Min-jae's blood ran cold. Who? He demanded, voice like steel. Who sent this? Kiyoma reached into her bag again and pulled out a business card. Bent, stained with something that might have been blood. She handed it to him without a word. Min-jae took it, read the name embossed in gold letters, and the world stopped. Alexei Volkov. Min-jae's face went pale. Actually pale, Kiyoma noticed. You know him. It wasn't a question. Min-jae didn't answer, just stared at the card like it was a death sentence, because it was. 3 years ago, Busan. A deal that should have been simple, arms shipment coming in from Vladivostok, Russian seller, Korean buyer, neutral ground. Min-jae was the middleman, the facilitator, the one who made sure everyone walked away clean. But the shipment was dirty, marked by Interpol. Someone on Volkov's side had talked. When the raid happened, bullets flew, bodies dropped. Volkov's younger brother, Dmitri, 23, eager to prove himself, took a round to the chest. Died before the ambulance arrived. Volkov lost his brother and $50 million in one night, and he blamed Minjay. It wasn't a betrayal, Minjay had tried to explain during the one phone call they had after. I didn't know the shipment was compromised. Volkov's response was ice cold. You were responsible. You were supposed to keep us safe, and now my brother is dead. I will take everything from you, Ryu. Everything you love. And you will watch. Then the line went dead. Minjay had spent the next 2 years waiting for retaliation, increasing security, watching his back. But nothing happened. He'd thought Volkov moved on, found another target, let it go. He was wrong. He wants revenge, Kiyoma said quietly, watching Minjay's face. And he knows you care about me, about Izina. The realization hit Minjay like a freight train. His one act of mercy, the night he gave Kiyoma his coat in the rain, protected her, let the world see she mattered, had painted a target on her back. Volkov hadn't moved on. He'd been waiting for Minjay to care about something. Someone. And now he had his leverage. I should have never let you go, Minjay said, voice rough with guilt. I should have kept you here, kept you safe. You gave me freedom, Kiyoma replied, holding Izina tighter. You gave me a choice, and it almost got us killed. The silence between them was heavy. Then Minjay made a decision. You're staying here, he said. Final. No room for argument. Both of you. And this time no one touches you. I don't care what it costs. Kiyoma met his eyes. Minjay, if Volkov wants revenge, then he'll have to go through me. But keeping them close meant putting them in more danger, and neither of them knew the real threat was already inside the mansion. Keep watching. Kiyoma and Izina moved into the East Wing that same night. The wing Minjay had kept empty for 6 months, untouched, like a shrine to what he'd lost. Now it was filled with life again. Baby supplies appeared within hours, crib, changing table, bottles, clothes. Minjay's people worked fast. Guards were stationed at every entrance, security cameras upgraded. The entire estate locked down like a fortress. Kiyoma stood in the nursery, holding Izina, staring out the window at the rain. We're safe here, she whispered to her son. We have to be. But safe was a relative term, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just walked into a trap. Minjay kept his distance. Too much history, too much pain, too many things unsaid. He threw himself into work, tracking Volkov's movements, reinforcing security, making calls to allies who owed him favours. But every night, he'd find himself standing outside the East Wing, listening, to the soft sounds of Kiyoma singing Igbo lullabies, to Izina's small cries, to the life he never knew he wanted, just on the other side of the door. He never knocked, until the night Izina wouldn't stop crying. It was 2 a.m. when Minjay heard it. Not just the baby's cries, he'd gotten used to those, but Kiyoma's sobs, deep, broken. The sound of someone who'd reached their limit. He didn't think, just walked to the nursery and opened the door. Kiyoma was on the floor, back against the wall, Izina screaming in her arms, tears streaming down her face. I don't know what to do, she whispered when she saw him. I've tried everything. He won't stop. He won't. Let me, Minjay said quietly. He crossed the room, knelt beside her and held out his arms. Kiyoma hesitated, then, exhausted and desperate, handed Izina over. The moment Minjay took him, something shifted. Izina's cries softened, quieted, then stopped. He nestled against his father's chest, tiny fist gripping Minjay's shirt, and fell silent. Kiyoma stared, stunned. How did you... I don't know, Minjay said, voice soft, eyes locked on his son's face. Maybe he knows. Knows what? That I'm his father. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Kiyoma watched them, This dangerous man holding their tiny son with a gentleness that broke her heart. "He has your eyes," Min-jae whispered. "And your stubbornness," she replied, voice cracking. Their eyes met. And all the anger, all the pain, all the love they'd tried to bury, it was still there. Burning. "I missed you," Min-jae said. "Every single day." Kioma closed her eyes. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't make this harder than it already is." "Harder than what?" His voice dropped. "Harder than pretending I don't love you? Harder than seeing you with our son and knowing I almost lost both of you?" She opened her eyes, tears spilling over. "We can't." "I know." But when she reached for Azina, their hands touched, and neither of them pulled away. Then Min-jae's phone buzzed, sharp, insistent. He pulled back, checking the screen, and his expression darkened. Unknown number. A message. He opened it. A photo. Of the mansion, taken from outside the gates. Tonight. Below it, a single line. "Nice family you have there, Ryu. Would be a shame if something happened to them." Min-jae's grip on the phone tightened. Volkov was watching. What Min-jae didn't see was the figure in the hallway. Lieutenant Han Seo-jun, his new head of security, standing in the shadows just outside the nursery door. Phone pressed to his ear, speaking in hushed Russian. "Yes, they're together? The woman and the child are in the East Wing. He's with them now." A pause. "Understood. I'll keep you updated." Han ended the call, slipped the phone into his pocket, and disappeared down the hall. Inside the nursery, Kioma shivered. "What is it?" Min-jae asked. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I have a bad feeling." She glanced toward the door, toward the empty hallway, and for just a moment, she could have sworn she saw someone watching. But when she looked again, there was nothing, just shadows, and the growing certainty that they weren't as safe as Min-jae thought. The first attack came 3 days later. Min-jae was in a meeting with his financial advisors when the explosion rocked the compound. Not inside the mansion. Outside. The front gate. A car bomb. Timed perfectly for the shift change when security was most vulnerable. The blast shattered windows, sent guards scrambling, and turned a luxury sedan into a twisted metal skeleton. No one was killed. But that wasn't the point. The message was clear. We can reach you any time we want. Min-jae stood in the wreckage, rain falling on scorched pavement, and stared at the destruction. Lieutenant Han Seo-jun appeared beside him, face grim. "Sir, we've swept the perimeter. No additional devices, but whoever planted this knew our security rotation." Min-jae's eyes narrowed. "How?" "I don't know," Han said. "But I'll find out." He sounded sincere, loyal, concerned, too perfect. Kioma, watching from the East Wing window with Azina in her arms, felt her stomach twist. Something about Han didn't sit right. 2 days later, the second attack. Han himself discovered it, a container of baby formula in the nursery pantry, still sealed, still pristine. Except when he ran it through the portable scanner Min-jae had installed after the bombing, it lit up like a Christmas tree. Poison. Colourless. Odourless. Deadly. Enough to kill a grown man, let alone a 3-month-old baby. "I caught it just in time," Han said, holding up the container with gloved hands. "Someone swapped it out during the supply delivery this morning." Min-jae's blood ran cold. "Who had access?" "Everyone," Han admitted. "The staff, the guards, the delivery personnel. It could be anyone." Kioma stood in the doorway, holding Azina tighter, and watched Han's face. He looked concerned, professional, efficient. Too convenient. "How did you know to check it?" she asked suddenly. Han turned to her, surprised. "Standard protocol. I check everything that enters the East Wing." "Everything?" "Everything." Their eyes met, and Kioma saw something flicker in his expression, just for a moment. Then it was gone. That same day, Kioma's phone rang, her mother's number, Lagos. She answered immediately. Mama? But it wasn't her mother's voice. It was a man, speaking English with a thick Russian accent. Your mother is safe for now, but she received a package today. Open your messages. The line went dead. Kioma's hands shook as she opened her texts. A photo, sent from an unknown number, Izina, sleeping in his crib, with crosshairs drawn over his face, and a note below. 2 weeks, Kioma. Then we stop being polite. Minjae locked down the estate completely. No deliveries, no visitors, no one in or out without his direct authorization. Guards tripled, cameras upgraded, every room swept daily for bugs and explosives. The mansion became a fortress, but the attacks kept coming. A drone spotted hovering over the east wing at 3A. M shot down by security, but the message received. Encrypted emails sent to Minjae's private accounts. You can eat tea, protect them forever. A dead bird left on Kioma's windowsill with a note tied to its neck. Next time, it won't be a bird. Someone was feeding information to Volkov, someone inside. Kioma couldn't sleep. Every creak in the mansion sounded like footsteps. Every shadow looked like a threat. She trusted Minjae, trusted the guards he'd personally vetted. But Han, she didn't trust him at all. So one night, while Minjae was in a conference call and Izina was asleep, she did something reckless. She went to Han's office. The door was locked, but Kioma had learned a few things during her months as a maid. Locked doors were just suggestions if you knew where to look. She slipped inside, heart pounding, and started searching. Desk drawers, clean. Files, organized. Computer, password protected. She was about to give up when she noticed something. A phone, burner model, taped under the desk drawer. She pulled it free, hands shaking, and powered it on. No password. And dozens of encrypted messages. All in Russian. Kioma's blood ran cold as she scrolled through them. Target confirmed. Mother and child in East Wing. Security rotation updated. Sending now. Ryu is distracted. Proceed with Phase 2. And the most recent message, sent just 2 hours ago. He's getting suspicious. Move up the timeline. Kioma didn't remember running to Minjae's study. Didn't remember bursting through the door, phone in hand, breathless and terrified. But suddenly she was there, and Minjae was on his feet, alarm in his eyes. What happened? She shoved the phone at him. Your head of security is the leak. Minjae didn't want to believe it. Han Seo-jun had been with him for 2 years. Vetted, trusted, loyal. But the evidence was undeniable. He spent the next 3 hours digging through Han's background. Real background, not the fabricated one he'd been given. And what he found made his blood freeze. Han Seo-jun wasn't Korean. He was half Russian, born Seo-jun Volkov, Alexei Volkov's nephew, planted in Minjae's organization 2 years ago, waiting for the right moment. And that moment was now. Comment below. Would you trust anyone in that mansion? Because what happens next will leave you breathless. Minjae found Han in the security office, reviewing camera feeds like nothing was wrong. We need to talk, Minjae said quietly. Han looked up, smiled. Of course, sir. What? He didn't finish. Because Minjae moved faster than thought, grabbed Han by the collar, slammed him against the wall, gun pressed under his chin. 2 years, Minjae said, voice deadly calm. You've been here 2 years, eating at my table, earning my trust, reporting everything to Volkov. Han's smile didn't falter. Took you long enough to figure it out. Where is he? Close, always close. I'll ask one more time. Where? You think killing me stops this? Han laughed, cold, bitter. Volkov's already made his move. While you've been playing detective, he's been playing chess. And you just lost your queen. Minjae's grip tightened. What does that mean? Han's eyes gleamed with something dark. Check your phone, Ryu. Minjae's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered, gun still pressed to Han's throat. Hello? A voice, cold, satisfied, Russian accent thick as ice. Hello, Ryu. Looking for someone? Min-jae's world stopped. Volkov. Miss me? A pause. Check your messages. I sent you something special. The line stayed connected, but Min-jae pulled the phone away, opened his messages. A video file. Sent seconds ago. He pressed play. And his heart stopped. The video showed an abandoned warehouse. Dark, industrial, empty except for one thing, Kiyoma, bound to a chair, hands tied behind her back, tape over her mouth, eyes wide with terror. A man stepped into frame, Volkov himself, older, scarred, eyes dead. He leaned close to Kiyoma, smiled at the camera. Come alone, Ryu. Unarmed. Trade yourself for her. You have 2 hours. The address is attached. Don't be late. And don't bring company, or I'll send her back to you in pieces. The video ended. Min-jae stared at the screen, mind racing. When? He whispered. Han smiled. 20 minutes ago. While you were digging through files, my uncle's men were digging through your east wing. They're very good. Your guards never saw them coming. Azina? The baby's fine. He's not interested in children. Just you and her. Min-jae's hands shook, not from fear, from rage so cold it burned. He pulled the trigger, not to kill, to wound. Han collapsed, clutching his shoulder, gasping. That's for the baby formula, Min-jae said quietly. Then he walked out, leaving Han bleeding on the floor. His men tried to stop him. Sir, it's a trap. You go alone, you die. If I don't go, she dies. Then let us come with you. We can... No. Min-jae's voice was final. He went to the armory, stared at the weapons, then walked past them. Unarmed, like Volkov demanded, because if there was even a chance, even the smallest chance, that following the rules would keep Kiyoma alive, he'd take it. He stopped at the nursery. Azina was asleep, tiny chest rising and falling, completely unaware that his world was falling apart. Min-jae knelt beside the crib, reached through the bars, and gently touched his son's hand. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm sorry I wasn't there from the beginning. I'm sorry I didn't know, but I promise you I will fix this, no matter what it costs. He kissed his fingertips, pressed them to Azina's forehead, then stood and walked away. At his desk he wrote a letter. Short. Simple. Everything he should have said 6 months ago. Kiyoma, if you're reading this, I'm already gone, and I need you to know something. That night we spent together wasn't a mistake. It wasn't guilt or obligation or loneliness. It was the only real thing in my life. You made me human again. And Azina, our son, is proof that even monsters can create something beautiful. I love you. I should have said it before you left. I should have said it when you came back. I'm saying it now. Take care of him. Teach him to be better than me. Min-jae. He folded the letter, left it on the desk, and walked out into the rain. Alone. Unarmed. Ready to trade his life for hers. Because some things are worth dying for. The warehouse stood on the outskirts of Seoul, abandoned for years, surrounded by nothing but empty lots and broken streetlights. Perfect for what Volkov had planned. Min-jae's car pulled up to the rusted gates at exactly 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes early. He stepped out into the rain, hands visible, no weapons, exactly as instructed. The warehouse doors groaned open, and there, in the centre of the cavernous space, lit by a single hanging bulb, was Kiyoma, still tied to the chair, still gagged, eyes wide with fear and something else. Fury. Because Kiyoma Easy had survived trafficking, servitude, threats, and 6 months raising a child alone in a foreign country. She wasn't helpless, and she'd been working on those restraints since the moment they'd tied her down. Volkov stepped out of the shadows, flanked by 6 armed men. Older than Min-jae expected. Mid-50s. Scarred face. Cold eyes that had seen too much death to care about one more. Ryu Min-jae, Volkov said, voice thick with Russian accent. Punctual. I appreciate that. Min-jae didn't look at him, only at Kioma. Let her go. Volkov laughed. Straight to business. No greetings. No apologies for killing my brother. Your brother died because he was reckless, not because of me. Liar! Volkov's voice echoed through the warehouse. You were supposed to protect us. You were supposed to keep that deal clean. And instead, Dmitri bled out on a dock in Busan while you walked away untouched. Min-jae finally looked at him. I didn't walk away untouched. I've spent 3 years waiting for you to come for me, and now you have, so finish it. Let her go and take me instead. Volkov tilted his head, considering. You think I'll honour that? He stepped closer, gun raised. You think mercy exists in our world? No, Min-jae said quietly. But I'm betting on something stronger than mercy. And what's that? Love. Volkov laughed. Love? You think... That's when chaos erupted. Chioma's hands broke free from the loosened ropes. She ripped the tape from her mouth, rolled off the chair, and hit the ground just as... Crash. The warehouse windows shattered. Min-jae's men stormed in from every direction, armed, fast, efficient, because Min-jae hadn't come alone. He'd come prepared. Did you really think, Min-jae said, voice cold, that I'd sacrifice her without a backup plan? Volkov's face twisted with rage. Kill them! Kill them all! Gunfire exploded through the warehouse. Min-jae ran toward Kioma, dodging bullets, eyes locked on hers. She was crawling toward cover, and he reached her just as Volkov aimed his gun at her back. No! Min-jae threw himself over her, shielding her body with his. The shot rang out, and Min-jae felt the bullet tear through his shoulder. Pain, white-hot, blinding. But he didn't let go. I've got you, he gasped into her hair. I've got you. Kioma's hands clutched his shirt, tears streaming. You idiot! You stupid, reckless... I know. The firefight lasted 3 minutes. Min-jae's men were professionals. Volkov's men were desperate. Desperation doesn't win gunfights. 4 of Volkov's men went down. The other 2 surrendered. And Volkov? He tried to run, made it to the back exit, thought he was free, until the floor gave way. The warehouse had been condemned for a reason. Rotted beams, unstable foundations. Volkov fell through the floor into the flooded basement below, 20 feet down, and didn't come back up. Poetic, in a way. Killed by his own arrogance. Outside, the rain poured as sirens wailed in the distance. Min-jae sat on the wet pavement, back against the warehouse wall, Chioma pressed against his chest, his blood soaking through both their clothes. Ambulance is 2 minutes out, one of his men reported. Min-jae nodded weakly. Chioma pulled back, looking at his wound, hands shaking. You're bleeding. I'm fine. You got shot. For you, he said softly. I'd take 100 bullets for you. Kioma's face crumpled. Don't you dare leave me, don't you dare. Not after everything. Not when Azina. I'm not going anywhere, Min-jae whispered, lifting his good hand to cup her face. I promise. You can't promise that. Watch me. She kissed him then. In the rain, in the blood, in the aftermath of violence. And it felt like the first time and the last time and every time in between. I can't do this without you, she cried against his lips. You don't have to. The ambulance arrived. And for the first time in 3 years, Min-jae Ryu allowed himself to believe in second chances. 6 months later. The mansion felt different now. Still grand, still powerful, but no longer empty. There was laughter in the hallways, baby toys in the sitting room. Igbo songs hummed in the kitchen. Life. Real, messy, beautiful life. Kioma stood in the nursery, teaching Azina, now 9 months old, simple words. Nene, she said, pointing to herself. Mama. Azina babbled something incomprehensible and grabbed her nose. She laughed. Close enough. The door opened, and Min-jae walked in, holding a children's book in Korean. Ready for story time? Izina's face lit up. He reached for his father with chubby hands. Min-jae scooped him up, settled into the rocking chair and began reading. His Korean was smooth, confident, his fatherhood, still clumsy, still learning. But he was trying, and that was enough. Chioma watched them, this dangerous man reading about talking animals to their son, and felt her chest tighten with something she never thought she'd feel again. Hope. What? Min-jae asked, noticing her stare. Nothing, she said softly. Just this. This. She gestured to the three of them, the nursery, the life they'd built from ashes. Yeah, she whispered. This. Later, when Izina was asleep, they stood together in the nursery doorway, Min-jae's arm around Kioma's waist, her head on his shoulder, and on the wall, in a simple frame, was the napkin, the one she'd used to wrap her bread that first night, a reminder of where they started, two broken people in the rain, one act of mercy that changed everything. I learned that second chances don't erase the past, Kioma said quietly. They don't make the pain disappear, but they give you the chance to build something new from the broken pieces. Min-jae kissed the top of her head. And what did we build? She smiled. A family, against all odds, against everyone's expectations. We built a family. Love isn't about being safe, Min-jae murmured. It's about choosing someone every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. They stood there, holding each other, listening to their son breathe, imperfect, scarred, healing, but together. And that was everything. So they got their second chance, but it cost them everything to get there. Bloodshed, betrayal, a bullet that could have ended it all. But they survived. Because love, real love, isn't about fairy tales or easy answers. It's about fighting like hell when everything tells you to give up. It's about seeing someone at their worst and choosing them anyway. It's about building something beautiful from the wreckage. Comment below. Do you believe people like Min-jae can change? Can love really redeem a monster? Because this story says yes. It says that mercy matters, that second chances are worth fighting for, that even the darkest hearts can learn to love. If this story moved you, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories about impossible love, second chances, and the messy truth about being human. Stories that'll make you cry, make you hope, make you believe that redemption is possible. And remember, sometimes the greatest act of love isn't holding on. It's fighting like hell to hold on when everything tells you to let go. Min-jae could have walked away, Kioma could have stayed gone, but they didn't. They chose each other, every single day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.